My name is Lisa Braxton. My background is right now I'm a traveling nurse. Did not start out that way. It was a long haul to get to this point to where I am. And so I was asked to come and share a little bit about my testimony and how I've gotten to where I am today through a process of recovery. My life, I'll begin basically at the beginning. My life for me started out as, I was born, and I feel like I was one of those people that was just kind of born wound too tight. It was just since I was young, there was just something that I just did not feel right on the inside since I was born. And right around, I remember I was molested when I was a child. About 3 years old, I started being raped, and that continued on for a long while, most of my childhood. And even from a young age, I just kind of felt like there was something not right with me. It was told, like, if you were good, these things wouldn't happen. And so I just spent all my time trying to be good. And no matter what I did, it just didn't seem like I was good enough. And I remember just being young and just feeling like there was just something not right with me. Things were going on outside of me that was happening to me that contribute to my thought process that there's something not right with me. As I got older, around 5 years old. 5 years old was my first suicide attempt. I remember being young and being about 3 or 4 years old and not even wanting to live anymore. I didn't know what else to do except for to end my life. And so at 5 years old, my first suicide attempt. And prior to that, I had already, I went to a private school. I want to mention this. I went to a private school and I wanted God so much. And in the school I went to, it was a Christian private school. We read about God. We talked about God. I went to church on Sundays, and things of that nature. And I wanted God so much. And I remember in chapel at the school we went to, there was chapel once a week. During chapel, I went there, and there was a time when we had a session where they asked us if we wanted to give our hearts to the Lord. And I remember very clearly at 3 years old, I went up to the front and I was just like, I want to give my heart to the Lord because I wanted a difference in my life. And that, what I read about and what I heard about and what they said when they gave that altar call was something that I wanted and needed. Now, during that process, I was still having those feelings and things like that. And like I said, I'm going to skip to the part where I was beginning to speak on 5 years old, my first suicide attempt. And it just kind of continued from there. Like I had this struggle to even want to live. And fast forward slightly, about 7 or 8, I ended up with an eating disorder. And I stopped eating, didn't want to eat anymore. And I figured, and it wasn't continuous. It was just, and it wasn't so much I was concerned about weight. When I mention an eating disorder, a lot of times, people would say it's because of a weight issue or if I wanted to be a smaller size. And for me, it didn't really have anything to do with that. I just didn't want anything in my mouth. And that was the cause. And no matter, and I ended up trying to get help later on for that. And I was saying, I don't have an eating disorder. It's just, I don't, and it's still considered an eating disorder because I didn't want anything in my mouth because of the abuse that I was having before. Right about my teen years, I ended up in a spot to where, throughout the process of dealing with the eating disorder, dealing with low self-esteem, dealing with not feeling worthy of anything, I just began to kind of follow what everyone else was doing. And it was kind of what I've come to know later was being a chameleon. If someone smiled, I smiled. If they looked happy, I looked happy. And I followed what everyone else did because I just wanted to fit in a little bit. And if I could try to fit in a little bit, it made me feel like I was better. Just for that moment. And then when I would leave that moment, I was back to dealing with me. And that seemed to be the biggest problem, was dealing with me. Eventually, when I got to, I graduated with honors from high school, did everything that I needed to do in order to get to college. I started, I went to college and things just kind of, just doing whatever I wanted to do. I was going to school for biomedical engineering, and I just knew that I was going to be in history books next to Charles Drew. That was going to be the thing that I wanted to do. During that process, when I went there, I was going there for that, and then I was kind of starting to change my mind, trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life, and I was raped again. And prior to that, because of the abuse I've experienced, I was having miscarriages before I got to college, and once I got to college, I was raped again. I was assaulted twice. I moved back to Tampa, where I'm from, and these things just kept continuing, and I just didn't know what to do with myself. I felt so. I felt like I just wasn't worth anything. And then even if I could gear up the thoughts to say that I was worth something, I figured that no one else thought I was. So I said, I finally could say I'm worth something, but no one else thinks I am. So what does it matter? And so eventually I had some roommates that belonged to the same church I did at the time, and I lived with them, and they noticed my behaviors. They noticed that because I could blend in enough. I blended in enough to where people thought I was okay. No one knew about my background. No one knew about anything really. And if I were to mention anything, it was from a standpoint of I'm okay. And I could smile with the best of them. I did everything that any other person would do. I'm often asked, well, why didn't you mention anything? Why didn't you talk to your family? And, even when I was younger, but my family seemed so happy. And for me, it seemed like if me being one person was having a hard time, and I have an older sister, a younger brother, a mother, and a father. And so that's 5. So, and there was just 1. So you got 4 and 1. One person is upset. I mean, it's better than 4. And so even as a little kid, I just took everything as opposed to trying to share it, because I didn't want everyone to be upset. I just said, I'll just take it for myself and I'll deal with it myself. So eventually, when I was with the roommates, they began to notice things going wrong. They noticed me like not being able, if I did eat, I wouldn't keep it down. They noticed me not eating. They'd have to tell me to eat, say, did you eat today? Or some things like that. And I was just, and I would try, but it's like I wasn't getting better, and they would notice the different flaws that kept popping up because you can only hold it in for so long. And I spent majority of my life kind of in a little, in a shell. Even as a child, I could shut myself off to where if something came up that I did not like, I could shut everything off to where it was black. And I could shut out all sound where I wasn't able to even hear anything. And I would live in like a little spot to where I would dissociate, where I wouldn't be able to even know what was going on around me. Wow. So I lived in a spot to where I could do it at will. And that was kind of just the way it was for me. So I lived in a spot of kind of a perpetual dissociation. So I wasn't properly aware of my surroundings. And you can only do that for so long before people notice. And being in close quarters with my roommates, they began to notice that there was something not quite right. And eventually what happens, they told me, you know what, you need to get help, because I ended up causing troubles because of the things that I was going through. They said, you need to go get help, or you need to move out. And then eventually they said, you know what, you need to get help and you need to move out. And these are people that loved me and that cared for me and wanted the best for me, but it was just so much going on that it was just causing troubles with what I was doing. So I went to go get help. And this is kind of where the addiction process began. I was already in a state to where I was, I could function, but it was just at a robotic type of a thing. And I went to the doctor and I said, hey, I went to nutritionist. The nutritionist said you need a therapist. And I went to the therapist said you need a psychiatrist. And I went to the psychiatrist and he said, you need all these medications. And I welcomed anything he gave, because like I said, like my first suicide attempt, I was 5, but that the thoughts and the desire to not live just continued on. I just kept fighting it off and fighting it off. And when they said, you need medication, I said, well, what you got? And they began to give me medication after medication after medication. And if I saw something on television, saw a commercial about a medicine, I'd go to the doctor and ask for it. And he'd say, sure, and write it up. By the end, I ended up with 14 different pills. And this is 14 different pills. And some of them I took multiple times a day. I had pills for anti-anxiety, antidepressant, antipsychotic, mood stabilizers, everything, 14 different pills. And some of them it said, take as needed. Well, I always felt I needed it, so I was always taking them. And I just took so many pills all the time, and it was just and this wasn't to make me feel good. This was literally just to make me feel normal, like I wanted to live for that day a little bit. And not to mention what taking all that stuff does to your physical body, because your body has to filter all of that, but I didn't care too much about that. I just wanted to want to live, to not want to die for the moments that I had. And not deal with the crippling anxiety that would cause me to feel like I couldn't breathe, or the depression that would leave me to where I almost couldn't even move my body. And I remember just feeling like I was just out of it. And I went to, eventually what happened was, I had a friend who I'd known for years. I'd known this friend for years, and this friend had gotten sober. And I was just like, I met her, and I was like, oh, this is nice, and everything's doing well. And everyone knew that I didn't drink. I didn't drink alcohol, and I'd gone to church my whole life. And typically, I was taught when I was younger that, alcohol is not good and things like that. There was a saying that would say, we don't smoke, we don't chew, and we don't hang with those who do. And then it was always added in, and we don't drink either. And I always would feel like that was a bad thing. And once I realized that, and I was hanging out with my friends, and I realized that, it would be okay if I drank, and as long as I didn't get drunk and I had all this in my head, still didn't drink. Drinking wasn't a problem. It didn't matter to me whether I did or did not. And one day I was with my friends, and I said, I'll have a drink. And I took a drink, and it was no problem. It was fine. And I went home, and I bought some more, and I was drinking it, and I said, a little bit's going to be fine for me, no problem. And then one day, shortly thereafter, I read one of my pill bottles of the pills that I took. And on that bottle, it said, do not take with alcohol because it might intensify the effect. And for me, a light bulb went off. That's what I wanted. I struggled so hard to keep things together, that if it can intensify the effect of these medications, if it can make the antidepressant work better, if it can make the anti-anxiety work better, that's what I wanted. And so without thinking, that's what I went for. I said, well, if it's going to help it, if it's going to make it work better, if it's going to intensify the effect, I'm going to try it. And knowing what I know now, I know that's not a good idea. But then I didn't know. I was just desperate to feel better, and I started drinking. And not only did I start drinking a little bit, I started drinking a lot of it. And I started drinking in the morning, and if I had to work, I would just lick the top of the liquor bottle to get the flavor in my mouth, and then I would work all day, and I would come home and I would do all the drinking at night. And it wasn't because I wanted to go out and have fun or to have a good time. I can do those things without alcohol. I just needed alcohol to be with myself, to be with my emotions and my feelings, because all of those had been so underdeveloped since a child. So I needed help, and that was what I used to help me. And so eventually I was just talking to this friend who had gotten sober, and I figured I'd go with her to, it was a 12-step program, to try to support her. And so I went to support her thinking that I did not have a problem. And I first went to a 12-step program for the eating disorder. And I went to the other 12-step program for drinking. And when I was there, I just, I sat there for a really long time saying, all these people are not drinking. And, when I leave here, because I don't have a problem with drinking, I'll just go and I'll have a little bit to drink. And I'm just so proud of them that they're not drinking. And I did that for so long. It's embarrassing. I did that for at least 2 years before I realized, wait a minute. I think I have a problem with alcohol. I didn't even notice it. It didn't occur to me. But then one day it snapped. And I was like, you know what? I do have a problem with alcohol. And that day I stopped drinking. And I went home and I said, I'm going to drive home and I'm not going to drink anymore. And on my way home, I got so nervous about me not drinking that it was like a ball of nerves, just feeling like I didn't want to drink anymore, or I didn't want to allow myself to drink anymore. And I was so nervous that I pulled into the liquor store and got more alcohol, drank it in the parking lot. And as I was drinking in the parking lot, I had this moment of like, you thought you had a problem. Now you know you have a problem. And I went all in to trying to be set free. And I listened. I had someone who mentored me through that process. I listened to what they told me to do. If they told me jump, I was 10 feet off the ground before they said how high. I mean, I wanted to be better. I wanted to be sober more than I wanted to drink. I wanted to be free of anxiety more than I cared about drinking. I wanted to be, I wanted freedom. I wanted freedom. And so what I did was I did what I had to do. And through this process, I began to like work through sobriety. And in that we had to really delve into my relationship with God. Now, me growing up in church, I knew about God. I went to private school. I talked about God often. Like if you were to talk to me prior to this, that's basically all I talked about. It's all I knew. I had all this head knowledge of the Lord. I had head knowledge of Christ. I could tell you about what he did. I had scriptures that I could read off, but for me, it helped me some to have that head knowledge because I knew at a starting place. But having that fellowship with God is what really changed my life. Spending time with God and letting him talk to me and be with me and tell me who I was, showing me my identity is what really changed my life. And it took a while for me to get to that point. It started with just learning about who God was. And I did that. I had to figure out, I had to look for him. And he wasn't hard to find. He's always there, always there. And one of the things that I did first was I was told to, make a gratitude list. And I always tell people now, gratitude really helped me out. Finding things to be grateful for, and there was always something. So I would sit and I'd write things to be grateful for. And then I would watch God move. I would watch the things that God did in my life. And it showed me that God was there and he was listening and that he heard me and that he cared. And I thought that I wasn't worth anything to anyone else. And God showed me that I was worth something. He showed me that recovery is possible. Little by little, the alcohol stopped right away, because that was the point. Alcohol was going to stop. And then I didn't need once I delved into the process of being sober, I did not need all the pills anymore. I went to the doctor and was like, I think I'm feeling better. I didn't feel better for so long. And I went to the doctor and I told him, hey, this is what's going on. I was honest and said what's going on, and the pills started coming off. I didn't need any more. Now I don't need any. When that's a miracle in itself. It was just, it took a continuous process of steadily continuing to go forward and to grow. And I remember hearing some people, and they're miraculously, and I know this is possible, where they come to the front of an altar at any church, and they get prayed for and ping, and they're better. But for me, it was a process. I went through step by step, finding out who God was. And when I found out more about who God was, I found out more about who I was. And that took time, and it took time with me with him. And so what I did was I ended up just following the lead of what other people told me to do that had been through this process before. And I got into helping other people, showing up. And if something bothered me, I made sure I helped somebody else. And then eventually, I got to a point to where, like, I was better with the alcohol. I was better with taking all the pills. I wasn't taking any more pills. Hadn't taken them in years, and hadn't drank in years. Right now, I have 11 years sober, and but it was probably about, I want to say about 8 years sober. About 8 years sober. It's about 8 years sober. I wasn't thinking about drinking. I wasn't thinking about pills. I was in the things that still needed to be worked on was through the process was more like the emotional side, the growing up and maturing in life. And so being that those things have been stunted for so long, those needed time to develop. And it's just kind of life issues. When life issues came up, I didn't think about drinking. I just didn't know how to deal with them. And so I ended up still having moments of where I would still feel those feelings of depression, or I'll still feel those feelings of anxiety. And there was this one time where I was feeling these strong feelings of anxiety and depression, and this was about 8 years sober. And I had this feeling of where I needed some help, and I knew where to get the help, and I knew that I needed to give my life to God again. And I remember at 3 years old, when I gave my life to the Lord, I meant it with my whole heart. And I said, you know what, I'm doing it again. And I came to this church, and I was sitting in the back, and it was New Year's Eve, and I could not wait for the altar call. I could barely pay attention to anything else because I knew there was going to be an altar call at the end. And at the end, when the altar call came, I shot up to the front, and I was ready to give my life to the Lord because I knew that there was something else that needed to be done, and I couldn't shake those feelings. And I came to the front, and I rededicated my life to the Lord, and it was miraculous what happened next. I spent quality time with God, and it was in a way that I hadn't before. I remember talking to God, and I'd pray before I ate, and and I would say I prayed, but really I didn't really. And so I started spending more time with God, a lot of time with God, because I was at the point to where I was feeling. It was almost like I was at a breaking point. I was feeling like there was a breaking point coming, and it was so close. And I was in my house one day, and I had already given my life to the Lord, and I was just like feeling like there was something's going to happen. And it was either you snap right now and just completely lose your mind, or you talk to God and give everything to Him. And that's what I did. I started asking, instead of me just breaking at that particular point, I said, you know what, God, so how are you doing today, God? And that's how my conversation with the Lord started. And from there, I would talk, and we'd have conversations, and I'd spend time learning about Him and just telling Him what was going on in my life. And He has changed my life so much through that communication with Him. And it was all the time, because I had friends that I would talk to that I ended up not speaking to as much. And but I would talk to the Lord, and He would spend that time with me talking, and it wasn't I would have to sit there and wait. We would have a dialogue like I had a friend. And I always felt, because of the way things happened, I didn't really know how to develop relationships. That's the things you learn back in kindergarten, preschool. How do you play in the sandbox with a friend, and you meet and you talk and you communicate and you grow. I didn't learn how to do those things. So talking with God and communicating with Him was teaching me how to be a friend, how to communicate with the friend. And I knew God as Savior because I know He had saved me, but then I began to know Him as a friend. And that to me made a big difference, And so through that process, I began to grow and grow and grow, just spending more time with Him. And I'd ask Him in the mornings, I still do, well, what's on your heart today? And we'll just sit and talk about it for a little while. And it's been great. It has been great and wonderful. But the thing that has changed me the most was that encounter with God. When I got to that end point and I said, you know what? Something's got to give. And I've given all I have, and I don't know what else is left. And when I went and I said, I'm going to rededicate my life again, even though I meant it when I was young, I said, I'm going to do it again. And when I did, and I started spending that quality time with God, like my life was changed. So I eventually said to myself, I said, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to like continue this process. I'm going to continue to move forward. And throughout my life, you know, I just kind of felt like unworthy of anything. And then during this process of me talking with the Lord, I would speak to him, and he would call me his delight. He would call me his delight. He would call me his young one, his precious one. And I felt like I knew, not only did I feel, but I knew that I was worth something. And like there's so much more to it, but I just felt like I was worth something. And during that, and it was recently, this was probably, I want to say about a month or two ago, I was talking to the Lord, and I was just talking to him about the things, the names that he calls me, because I find them so endearing. And he called me like his pure delight. And that meant so much to me, because I had been in a place where, you know, my past was not pure, and then my present is. And I'd always been that way to him. He's always seen me pure. But in my mind, I didn't see it that way. And for me to be able to trust him and to know him and to know his heart for me, and to hear him say that I am his pure delight, really, really touched me. Because, I mean, that's what's real. He's real to me. And I want to just tell everyone who's watching, if you are in a position where you feel like you are stuck, or you are lost, or you aren't valuable, or you are not worthy, or you can't get free from whatever you're in, whatever addiction, any anxiety, depression, anything that you feel might be too hard, it's not too hard. You can be free. That is the will of the Lord for your life, is for you to be free. So, like, I feel like I want to just make sure I reiterate, or make sure that it's a point that I say, that the level of what I've had go through and the level of joy I feel now it's just, the difference is uncanny. Like, I feel like a totally different person, all the way from the inside out. Like, when they see me smiling now, it's not that fake made up smile that I smiled because someone else was smiling. I was following along. Like, I really feel legit on the inside that God has changed my life so much that inner peace, that inner joy, the inner happiness is like unmeasured, because it's what he's done for me. It's miraculous. It's miraculous. The difference is just more than I can even express in words. You feel it? So.
When you were talking about being grateful, I forgot the mental struggles before I came this far.
Came to Christ?
Yeah.
I forgot. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
But I had to say, wait a minute. I forgot that before I came to Christ, I was being tormented.
Yeah. And you didn't know how to get through it.
No.
I didn't. And I was drinking and I was smoking. But I really forgot that.
Yes.
It was to suppress the mental battle. I don't want to feel, I completely forgot that. And, you know, God has been telling me to be grateful, be grateful. And I'm like, I mean, Daddy, I am grateful. But he's been like, be grateful for your mind. And I completely forgot that I used to drink to suppress the feelings. I used to smoke to suppress the feelings.
Eat to suppress the feelings.
The eating was the biggest one, because I still had that out there coming across.
Listen,
and not when I knew.
I'm just getting over that last week.
Amen. Glory God. Glory God. But I just thank you again, because now I can go back and talk to my daddy about this. You're right. I'm sorry. How arrogant of me to think that I've always been this way. You help me. You are the fighter inside of me. I don't have to drink anymore to suppress these emotions. You walked me through it.
Yeah.
Spirit, how amazing. I didn't need a physical substance in the real world. You're inside of me, and I didn't need to go to anything else. That's amazing. I just completely forgot that. I forgot. I'll go to sleep, I'll drink, go to sleep, drink, go to sleep. I completely forgot.
Listen.
Like, oh, it's just a little bit. It was just a little bit. And I would always think it's just a little bit.
It's just a little roach.
Right. You know what I found? And I always say this at the end of like my story when I tell it typically. I always say this story, and it's not my story. Like I didn't invent this story. I heard it on the radio, and I didn't have time to share it. But there was a time where I had this. I was listening to the radio, and they were talking about pets, and one person talking about their pet snake. And I've since heard somebody else share it as well. But the person was talking about their pet snake, and they had this little pet snake, and they would, it was a little baby python, let's just call him Slick, little baby Slick. And the little snake was there, and they loved it, and they noticed that that little snake would only stay warm better if it was in the bed with them. So they put the little baby snake in there to get the body heat instead of the heat lamp because it worked better. And so they're in the bed, and the snake began to grow, and they noticed as the snake got bigger and bigger, one day the snake it curled up by the feet of the bed, and one day it was laying his head on the pillow. And that's weird. It's never done that. That's weird. And then the person got nervous, and they took the snake to the vet, and was like, hey, little Slick is acting funny. He's laying out straight. We'll just make sure he's okay. He's not eating, nothing. What's going on? And the veterinarian said, do you know what snakes do when they're getting ready to devour large prey? And she was like, no, what do? They said they stretch out their bodies straight in order to see if that prey if they're big enough to fit that prey inside their mouth. And then once they realize that they're long enough to fit that prey inside their mouth, they stop eating to make sure that they have enough room in their body to fill it up with whatever prey they're going to eat. They said that little baby snake that you had that you thought was so cute is trying to kill you. Mm-hmm. That thing is going to eat you alive. And that lady, she was so taken aback by her baby snake. That was her little Slick that she had raised from a little thing, and now it was going to kill her. And that's the way it was for me and alcohol, and for me and taking all those pills, and for me and the anxiety, and me and the depression. What I thought was the little tiniest thing, was what was trying to come at me to kill me, and I was none the wiser. But God showed me, like He's the veterinarian, and said, hey, this is not what you need. This is not going to help you. This is going to kill you. But there was a way out, and I got that way out from Him. Like He literally showed me the way out. He was there every step of the way, and there's details in it that that I'd love to share. But there's it takes time to share them. But unfortunately, I don't have all that time. But the details of how God brought me through those things are just miraculous, because He really does care. Really, really does. Seriously, man.
That's crazy.
Seriously.
Not crazy, but like.
Could you imagine a little baby snake?
Right. And it's like, man, that cupcake ain't gonna kill me.
Yeah.
It's that part.
It's like, man, I'm gonna just go to Chick-fil-A. Right.
I gotta eat.
It's just one time.
It's just one time, and then it ends up being like 7 times that week.
Mm-hmm.
But like in 2 days, it just be the.
Tell us about it. Tell us about it.
Y'all are funny. I'm not used to being on camera, but no, seriously, all it takes is just one little thing for you to be like, it's nothing. Mm-hmm. It's nothing.
That's it.
I'm just gonna get the wine from Family Dollar. It's nothing.
It's on sale too.
It's on sale. It's 2 for like what, $3? Like, it's nothing. It's not even the strong wine.
And then it's
difficult
say it's not even strong.
Like,
They say it's not strong.
And then you end up drinking and driving and almost hitting somebody. It's like, yeah.
So it's a small snake. It grows.
Or hiding. Then you start hiding the liquor bottles, and it's like, yeah, this is not good. Or you try to hotbox in your room, and it's like, this ain't cutting it at your mama house. This is not cutting it. But yeah.
The things we overcome.
Things we overcome.
And completely forget.
Through Christ.
I genuinely just thought it was, I don't know, I can't arrogantly say I thought it was me. I just forgot.
No, for real.
That
You like, oh, thank God.
Sometimes I did. Sometimes I would forget. I would acknowledge God verbally. Mm-hmm. Like I'll say, oh, it's the Lord. The Lord did this for me, because I've been in church my whole life. Mm-hmm. All I knew was to say, the Lord did it. The Lord did it. The Lord did it. And I would say it. I didn't really mean that.
Right.
I said it because that's what you say. Mm-hmm. I wasn't trying to be, I didn't even know how to properly
associate.
How to properly give credit to anyone
right.
else. Mm-hmm. Like all I knew, I could say it, but in my mind, I really was like, man, I did great. You did wonderful.
Go you.
And it was like, but I would say God did it, and I just didn't have the mental ability to kind of sort how through somebody else did something,
Right.
And so I said it right, but it wasn't the right. In my heart, it's not what I meant.